Welcome to Liverpool City Region Creating Careers. We're joined on today's seminar by Dave Hogan from the Institution of Engineering and Technology. We're really looking forward to your informative sessions, and students should have completed the pre-work set for this webinar. And no doubt there'll be some interesting questions for the Q&A sessions, which we're going to host towards the end. Students, please use your Q&A button, which is on your screen at the bottom, to post any questions that you may have, either during or after the sessions. Hi, David.
Oh, all right, Jill. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, glad to help. Right. Okay. Well, I'd like to introduce myself. Obviously, you can see there, my name is David Hogan. Yeah, forget all the letters after the name. We'll talk about those in a bit. And just really, just to set the scene and just let everybody know what we're going to be talking about this afternoon for about the next, and sound about 45 minutes or so, is talking about my career, what I've done. And as you can see, I'm not exactly a youngster anymore. And if anyone suggests I should be Father Christmas, they can leave now. There you go. What I want to do, though, is just take you through what I did and where I've got to. But more importantly, it's about where the good decisions came in, where the bad decisions came in, where I was lucky, and sort of where I've ended up now as you can see on the screen, a chartered engineer. But the important thing with all these things is always to say, where did it start? For those who may know it, I actually was born in Alderhay Hospital on the 19th of October 1955. Yeah, okay, it's a long time ago. And initially I grew up at 20 Sunbeam Road in Liverpool 13, Old Swan. Yeah, I always remember there, we used to have, for those who know it, almost inter-street warfare going on, when you're 6 and 7 years old. But then when I was coming up for about, I think I was about 8, and you got to remember, actually, my dad was a postman in Liverpool, and my mum worked in the Crawford biscuit factory. But we decided to move, and we moved across to the Wirral, and moved into a place, into 11 Sitchcroft in Neston, where we arrived, like you can see there, June 63. And we lived there until I joined the Royal Navy in 1975. I think this is where the first bit of luck, bit of decision making going on between myself and my parents. And we can bring that out later, because one of the strong messages I'd like to just bring out here, as an engineer, across the whole of my career, the important bit is to get the right perspective, the right qualifications right at the front end. For what a lot of people coming through, could be GCSEs, and I think the STEM subjects, the science, the technology, the engineering, the maths, are so critical as you go into your, if any of you are out there going into your options years, is to say, right, not double science, go for triple science if you can. Establish the solid foundation that would allow you to actually explore, even if you don't go there, the sort of engineering technology type career going forward. For myself, I have been an engineer for over 40 years now, and it's been a great career, and hopefully I'll show you some of the highlights shortly. The thing was, though, for those who remember it, and may even heard of it from your parents or grandparents, I actually failed my 11 plus. So I ended up in Neston Secondary School. But luckily, and that's where the luck starts coming in, I got a transfer to Wooler Grammar School for boys. But I did back a year because of a variety of reasons, but I ended up getting, 10 O levels, and went on to do my A levels. And I fundamentally made a complete and utter mess of my A levels. Put my hand up to that. It wasn't the best time. I was fed up with school and all the rest of it, because we all get there at some point. Unfortunately, I didn't do as well as I thought I could. However, in the meantime, I'd already tried to join the Royal Navy. And again, that was, luck, in as much that my best friend, Geoffrey Hinks, his brother had joined the Navy as a helicopter pilot. Now, why that made me think of joining the Navy as an apprentice, I have no idea. But that is exactly what I did. So the next stage is this bit. And I've tried to highlight with the blue arrows where I was. And this first slide, the one on the left, obviously, is when I joined HMS Guard in 1975 as what they called an artificer apprentice. For most of the year, basically that's a technician level. And my first qualification in the Navy was an ONC. I was fundamentally trained as a fitter and a turner, high power distribution, and looking after various weapon systems going forward, which is the picture on the right, where I was on what we call a 4.5-inch Mark 6 course, which was then the main gunnery system fitted to destroyers and frigates in the Royal Navy. So that's where I started. The interesting one was when I was at sea as an apprentice in a ship called HMS Torquay. I suddenly realised, apart from the fact that I really enjoyed being in the Navy, playing football for the ship's company, having a great time, my boss on board HMS Torquay said, "Hogan, I want you to go through for officer." And the first really bad decision was he asked me that right at the very beginning of the year on board, at which point I said no. And that cost me so much in time and effort going forward. So if you're ever presented with what potentially is a career-changing decision, think long and hard on it, because otherwise the danger is that you will miss a golden opportunity. I dismissed it out of hand because really I had no one to turn to say, is this a really good idea? I was happy in what I was doing, so therefore saw no reason to change it. However, what happened then was I did finally go and say, right, okay, I'm going to try and become an officer. And the picture on the right was literally in the summer of '79, where I'd been selected for promotion. And that meant I went off and I ended up in Dartmouth, which is the picture on the left-hand side. I know I'm in there somewhere, but for the life of me, I can't spot myself anymore. So that was the Britannia Royal Naval College down in Dartmouth, where I spent a couple of happy months, happy in inverted commas, by the way, being turned from being what we call a leading hand, which is a corporal, into a Royal Naval officer. It was a life-changing event. And the reason, in reality, I ended up there was, apart from my boss saying, "This is a good thing," I then met, and my wife of now 40-odd years suggested it might be a good idea as well. So the upshot of it all was that did Dartmouth, and the right-hand picture was really about my graduation day at the Royal Naval Engineering College at Manadon. The place doesn't exist now. It was closed down quite a number of years ago. But I gained my degree there with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. The big thing I'd like to bring out at this point is, from an engineering perspective, and this will come out a bit later when we talk about the IET or professional registration or whatever you want to call that, there are many, many, many ways to achieve success within engineering and technology. And can I just make it, you do not need to have a degree. It helps if for certain ones, but I've worked long and hard over a number of years to ensure that people recognize that people coming through the apprenticeship schemes, actually, although it may take them a bit longer, can achieve as much as anybody who's gone to university. And you have to understand, is university the right thing for me? Do I want to do it? What am I going to get out of it? Because engineering is multifaceted across so many different areas of digital. We've seen digital now, but mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, software engineering, the build industry, all of those things are open to you if you then start moving down that engineering and technology route. So just keep an open mind as you come through your GCSEs and your A levels, if that's where you are, to think, right, actually, what is it that I'm aiming for? Do I want to be an engineering technician? Do I want to be an incorporated engineer? Or do I want to be a chartered engineer? And do I see my career being one of engineering and technology going forward? but it's got to be based on that really solid foundation of your sciences and your maths. And I know those are the hard subjects that are going to be hard work, but once you've got them and you're off and running, then you can do with them what you want. If you haven't got them, then I'm afraid you'll take yourself down a bit of a cul-de-sac if you're looking to go through an engineering or technology type route. So again, there are crossroads you move across, which you need to understand what the implications of your decisions might be. So there I was, now newly graduated. I think I was a sub-lieutenant by that point. Got my Bachelor of Science, and at that point, actually, it was shortly after that I joined the Institution for Engineering and Technology, but we'll come back to some of that later on. So the thing is, having got your degree and being trained as a naval officer, where do you think you're going to go? Funny old thing, they send you to sea. So these are a couple of pictures. I had looked for another one of sea dart firing because I was on board HMS Ark Royal as what they call the weapon group officer. So I was responsible for all the guided weapon systems on board the ship, the gunnery systems, including phalanx, the looking after the air weapon systems, because on the left-hand picture of that, if you look in the top left-hand corner, you can actually see the nose of the Harrier, because we also had to look after all of the aircraft system in terms of weapon systems and missiles. So as you can imagine, it was quite an interesting couple of years I spent on there. She was the flagship of the Royal Navy, newly built. The first deployment I had when we joined was actually to go to the east coast of the States. And we were in the Hudson Bay for 10 days, the rededication of the Statue of Liberty. The only thing is with the Royal Navy is they get their pound of flesh, because after we left there, gone via Norfolk, Virginia, and I'll show you a picture in a minute of that. We then spent 6 weeks north of the Arctic Circle, chasing our tail during in a major NATO exercise. And I didn't see the upper deck for 6 weeks, as I say. So that was the important thing. In fact, you know, I took the degree, had been an apprentice, had a degree now, went to sea as a weapon group officer, applying the science and all the stuff we've been taught in a seagoing warship, which was actually, you know, from a technology perspective, you know, right at the front end at the time of command and control, the radar systems, comm systems, and all the rest of it, and guided weapon systems like this. You may notice the canister. In there is one missile. In fact, I can't say how many exactly we had, but it's about 15 feet long and weighs half a ton. And when it fires, it goes from 0 to Mach 2 in 2 seconds. So you can, you know, it's a pretty potent weapon. So I just thought I'd throw these in because just to give you, if you've never seen an American aircraft carrier, I just thought you might like to see this against Ark Royal. You can tell Ark Royal is the little one on the right-hand corner, and the American one is the John F Kennedy. So you can see the slight difference in size. But we worked well with the Americans. You know, they were very good, but they are awesome pieces of kit, those aircraft carriers. And the picture on the right-hand side was just the battle group we were with when we were crossing the pond, the Atlantic. So it gives you some idea of the things we were sort of getting into, having gone through, you know, the apprentice, got the degree, done the application courses, as we said, to get on board as the weapon group officer, to be looking after all the weapon systems on board. So what came after that? There was various short jobs. I was a software engineer, looking after the software for the weapon systems, and then a short side job providing support to the fleet. And then I was appointed, and you can see me there standing at the front with a blue arrow, as what they call the weapon engineering officer of HMS Gloucester. On board, I had a team of over 60 or 70 technicians working for me, but I was responsible for the captain. That's the big guy grinning with the brass hat. For all of the weapon systems, that's the gunnery systems, the missile systems, phalanx, comms, sonar. I'm responsible to him for their operational availability to allow the ship to be able to undertake its operational tasks. We had an interesting time because we brought the ship out of refit in Ross Side, did all the trials, and ended up in the Gulf of Arabian Gulf in 1995 in the summer. And if you want to go on holiday somewhere, do not go to the Gulf in the middle of the summer, because the temperature hit something in the region of about 52 degrees C. So it's a slight, it was warm to say the least. He stepped outside the ship and it was very uncomfortable. But it was a great couple of years that, I learned a hell of a lot, both about myself and about how you got a team together, because everybody on board was new. They were just literally come together as the ship staff, as we call them, in order to get the ship to a stage of operational readiness that allowed us to deploy to the Gulf, and to be up at the top end of the Northern Arabian Gulf. Luckily, I have to say, between the wars, so we had Iran on one side and Iraq on the other, all keeping a very close eye on us, but we did our patrols at the top end. And again, we were working with the Americans, and this time it was the Abraham Lincoln Battle Group. And if you ever seen Top Gun and seen a Tomcat trying to land on an aircraft carrier and take off again, I have to say those pilots deserve every single dollar they get. Absolutely phenomenal. It really was. So we came back from there. I went shoreside. I went to the command centre at Northwood, and one of the best jobs actually I had, apart from being the weapon engineer officer, was doing things like the field gun at HMS Excellent. Again, there's me arrowed. You've heard of it at Earl's Court. This is what this was done on the car park for this type of field gun. But basically, it was the same gun, and we were still throwing around a couple of tons of gun. This gun on a limber. But in the meantime, just to give you a bit of background, I also really got into rock climbing, snow and ice, mountaineering, and the Navy made sure you got all the right training. So I did all the training up at Ballachulish, Scotland, in order for me to take people away on expeds. And once they did that, the Navy and the Armed Forces did it all for us. It is there. You have to put the time in. It is hard work, don't get me wrong. There are drawbacks. In the Navy particularly, you're away and can be away for great lengths of time. You're not talking a few days, you're talking months on end. In fact, in reality, over a 4-year period, the longest stretch I spent at home was 6 weeks in those 4 years. But it was a good life, and I'm still married, 2 children, 2 grandchildren now. The right-hand one was I was getting a football trophy whilst I was still at HMS Excellent. I was such having to be walking past when they asked us to do it. So I thought, okay, then I'll chip in. I've got a little memento for it. Thank you very much. So that was the sort of my naval career. Now, I'm not trying to be a recruiting sergeant for the Royal Navy or even the forces. What I was just trying to show with this was to say that I consider myself to be extremely lucky to have got what I did as a lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy, having made some really bad decisions when I was coming through Royal Grammar School for Boys, when I completely flunked my A levels. It was only by pure luck that for some reason I wanted to join the Navy as an apprentice. And then again, more luck in terms of meeting the right people who pushed me to become an officer, which allowed me to get my degree and then get promotion and then become a lieutenant commander. I left the Navy in 2002, and this is the bit that then came afterwards. I joined BAE Systems. I was initially in Portsmouth, looking at how we supported complex warships, as we call them. Particularly, you may have heard of them, the Type 45 destroyers. A lot of work went into that to say, well, how do we look after these things? I left there in 2012, and for a couple of years became the operations director and the deputy CEO of the Engineering Council. Most of you probably have never heard of what the Engineering Council actually is, and this is when I'm flipping this back into what happens within engineering as you progress your career. You may have heard of chartered engineers. You certainly will, I think, probably heard of, say, chartered accountants or whatever. But the Engineering Council is the organisation that sets the standards against which individuals are assessed for their competency as engineers. And the fact is that you become a chartered engineer or an incorporated engineer or an engineering technician is that you have met the requirements, the competency requirements. The competency is your knowledge and understanding how your qualifications, and you can do, like I say, you can develop them a number of ways, whether it's through formal education, but you can also do what we call work-based learning. So you're learning on the job, and you can still achieve the same level of understanding in order to be able to do that. And the Engineering Council is the organisation that sets those standards. So I spent 2 years there. Really interesting, took it through a Royal Charter update. But in 2014, I decided to move, and I then moved on and became, for a 2-year contract, Business Improvement and Quality Director at a company called Nuvia. Actually, a lot of it's based actually up in the Northwest, particularly in Warrington and up in Cumbria, because they do nuclear decommissioning. So basically they chop up nuclear reactors, which is really quite an interesting thing to do. So again, that was building on my experiences of being an engineer, but actually also the business acumen bit, all the things that make you a rounded individual as you progress your career from a guy who's on the tools, as I was, an apprentice, all the way to being a strategic leader within both BAE and then the Engineering Council and at Nuvia. And there are differences, and this is the thing you've got to learn. What you just don't learn what you learn at the front end. You've got to think about as a continuum. We call it CPD, continuing professional development, is that you develop it throughout your career, and you always looking to improve, build on, understand new things that are coming up, new technologies, new things you want to do, because that fed through to me, because that allowed me to become what they call a fellow of the Institution for Engineering and Technology, which means I've been peer reviewed by people of a similar ilk and said, yes, you have met the criteria for that membership grade. You are acknowledged as being a good engineer, a good displayed the right behaviours and all the rest of it to become a fellow. In fact, now I'm a volunteer with the IET, so I actually do professional registration interviews and fellow assessments. I also have just recently become the chair of the IET Council, which sits at the highest level of the governance of the organisation. And it's a big organisation, by the way, if you haven't looked at it. It's got about 170,000 members across the world. And when I say across the world, I really do mean across the world. Like I say, I'm the chair of the IET Council, and I have members from all the way from Hong Kong through to the UK, across to New York, into Canada, and we've now got one in Silicon Valley in California. When you're trying to put a Zoom meeting together, trying to map it across all of those time zones can be something of an interesting challenge, to say the least. But moving on from that, you come to the point, as I did in 2016, decided, well, actually, it's probably about time I set up my own business, and that's what I did. Set up my own little consultancy business, one-man band. It's me, Carisbrook Associates, and since then I've actually been working quite nicely with academia. Initially with Cranfield University, and then Cambridge University, their Institution for Manufacturing. And I did that for a year or so. And at the moment, I actually work very much with a thing on the South Coast, because I now live just outside Portsmouth, with a thing called Coast to Capital Local Enterprise Partnership, where I go into businesses and help them look to see how they can grow their business, and particularly in these trying times, of COVID and all the rest of it, to help them realise their growth potentials, what they want to achieve. And it's actually been hugely rewarding since I started doing that. In fact, I only did one last Tuesday over in Brighton, which was a rather interesting one, to say the least. So that's me sort of rambled on. And I think what I've got here, these are, I thought I'd just show you some of the certificates. You can probably see some of them on the wall behind me. I could say, became a chartered engineer. I'm the fellow of the IET, and the one on the right was the very first one back in October 1990, when I became a chartered electrical engineer. So that goes back a wee way. And that's me.
Thank you, Dave. That was a great discussion around where you obviously started from and how your career sort of progressed in terms of obviously from where you started to where you actually sort of finished up at, and the different organisations that you work with as well. So that was a really inspiring story. So thank you for sharing that. I've just got a couple of questions, if that's all right, that I can put to you. So one of the first questions we got in was, who's been your professional hero, or who's inspired you over the years?
There's a number. I've asked the question when I was in Gloucester, actually, and I must admit my default position is go back to people in terms of like Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel. You know, they're really at the forefront of engineering, as people know it. The trouble with engineering these days is that nobody actually knows who engineers are, and it is a difficult thing, because if you said to most people, "Can you name me an engineer?" and they'd probably like to come up with Tim Peake. Now, he's not an engineer; he's actually a pilot. But if you then think about all the things that engineers do in the background, about sustainability, net zero, if you just look at the technology involved in your mobile phone, for instance, you know, it's engineers and technologists who have put those things together, who've developed the technology for people to be able to do what they do. You know, just doing this today, Zoom. Who do you think wrote the software? Who do you think developed the computers? It's all pervasive, engineering technology. Thing is, we just need to get that message out that for people to understand, even though it may be slightly hidden, it is all happening all around them. And with the societal challenges we have, because we're looking at that at the IET, and particularly around the sustainability, net zero issues. And that links in nicely with the stuff Jim's doing around Darwin, is to say, you know, going around and seeing what the effect is. And, you know, we're only going to sort those problems out using engineering and technology to do it.
Yeah. And just sort of leading on from that, we've had a question in, and there's obviously a lot of our young ladies across Liverpool City region around, are there many women in the engineering profession? And I know it's something that we do focus on as a career hub around, you know, getting young girls, young ladies into some of the professions. Yeah.
To be absolutely truthful, there's not as many as there should be. From a registration perspective, it's a very small number. What we're trying to do, the IET has got a huge piece around diversity going on at the moment, as all the engineering institutions, engineering companies, Royal Academy of Engineering, to say, look, it's everybody. It's not gender, it's not race, it's not, you know, if you got the acumen and that's what you want to do, then you can become an engineer. Unfortunately, sometimes you got to get past people's perceptions that an engineer is somebody who turns up in a van with plumber on the side. Not denigrating plumbers, by the way, because my nephew is one, running his own business outside Lytham. But to say it's all overalls and spanners, it isn't. You know, I know, I spoke about the IET Council. At least a good half of them are women and professors. They've got ladies there from all over the world, MBAs, you know, MSCs, all the rest of it, who have come into engineering, who are doing the right thing and actually aiding that diversity. So if you're inclined that way, go for it. People will welcome you with open arms. I can tell you that now.
No, that's a great way to put it, really, Dave. Yeah, and to encourage all of our young students really to look at, you know, some of the key professions that we need. So I suppose the one final question for me really is, so across the whole of your the professions and the different organisations that you work for, what's the one key skill that you think's worth sharing with our young people across the Liverpool City region that's really sort of helped you along your career pathway?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple immediately spring to mind. One, always remember you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen before you talk, but actually understand that when you work in organisations, a lot of the things you're going to, you can have the best technical background, but sometimes it's about your behaviours. You have to understand how you work within an organisation, how you work as a team, and there's both leadership, management, and the thing, because I ran the Royal Navy's Leadership School for 2 years, teaching over 6,000 people a year, leadership and management. And the thing we were saying is, you can be a leader, but there's also this thing called followership. You have to understand that, how you work within your group and your team, and actually say, and just be open-minded and think, right, okay, this is what I want to do. I need to learn. Who can I learn from? And at some point or other, like myself, that's why I volunteer so much with the IAT. You get to the point you say, well, actually, what do I want to do and put back into the profession, having spent 40 years drawing down on it, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and hopefully that will inspire our young people across our region to want to learn new things and to think about the skills that they are learning at school and college. And obviously what we're trying to do as well is to bring those through into sort of the world of work and how those things that they learn during the years of school that actually will benefit them once they get into the world of work. So yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much, Dave. Students, don't forget to check out our Creating Careers roadmap to evaluate today's session. Please go to our website, growthplatform.org/talent, where you'll find our employer video series on our YouTube channel and student pre-work resources. If you've got any further questions, please contact the Careers Hub team, careershub@growthplatform.org. Thanks for joining.